Why are humans so shit at birthing? Because despite being horrible it works, and as long as it works evolution won't fix it. You can look up how hyenas do it, it works so it doesn't get fixed. Because babies with big heads would usually die at birth and kill their mothers too, so those genes weren't as common as they are today. Evolution doesn't perfect an animal, just gets it to where it's good enough to survive. If an issue doesn't prevent most of the population from being unable to pass on genes, then there's no pressure, and population with mutations that might help assuage the issue will remain a minority population, and might even die out over time. If more of the mutated population survive to pass on their genes over time, then that's the gene that carries on for the species as a whole, and the animal has therefore evolved. If an animal struggles to walk with 3 legs, but this doesn't substantially prevent the majority of them from breeding, the animal is gonna keep having 3 legs instead of growing a 4th to perfect itself. Humans naturally give birth squatting or in a similar position. Less tears happen that way. You could think of it as being in the same sense that squatting helps you poop easier, because it shifts those muscles and organs. Lying down on your back while giving birth is a new thing that has a ton of risks, including increased tearing. You think we got it bad? Look up hyenas. I apologize in advance. 2 of humanity's biggest success factors are massive brains and an upright stance, so we can carry tools while running around. These create an unfortunate compromise. The necessary bone structure for fully upright, bipedal legs mean less space in between for the baby to come out, at the same time that big heads mean more space is needed for an easy birth. You might wonder why we didn't evolve to be born with smaller heads and have more brain growth happen later. Well, apparently we did, and we're already at an extreme of that. Human babies are born deeply helpless and undeveloped, mentally, and remain that way for much longer than most large mammals. Evolution has already shrunk the brain as much as it can to ease childbirth, and it's still this bad. Something about the massive adult brain requires it to be already quite large very early in development, or at least evolution hasn't found a good way around it yet. We succeeded anyway because big brain and upright stance are so incredibly OP that all the compromises are worth it. Historically, women didn't give birth in beds with their feet in stirrups. That idea came from male doctors who thought that uniform position helped them better handle the situation. Women traditionally gave birth squatting or even on all fours, holistic positions that open the pelvis up and work with the female anatomy to allow for greater flexibility and comfort during the birth. Back then, midwives brought babies into the world, and they had a natural understanding of how women's bodies worked, unlike a lot of modern-day medicine that was standardized by old white men. Edit. I'm pro-medicine and pro-science. I'm just also pro-women, and recognize a lot of harmful practices routinely practiced in modern medicine that disregard what's best for women. Why pap smears are still painful as hell, or why IUD inserts aren't done with local anesthetic. Why period products weren't tested with blood until 2023, or why tampons are now being investigated for lead contaminants. Honestly, there's not much research done in the medical field on women's health. It's only in the last few years that they've started studying menstrual blood. Women still die as a result of pregnancy and birth. Often these outcomes are preventable, but the bias in medicine hasn't changed. Hell, they are still having women labor while on their back and stuck in a bed. Pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum care are treated as natural, so if something isn't textbook it's likely because the woman did or didn't do something. Now, tearing doesn't always need to happen, but sometimes it does. We definitely won't evolve to prevent it. However, when doctors want you to deliver in a certain amount of time even without baby being in distress, they will cut you themselves to help things along. Insanity. Edit for grammar. Humans are not shit at birthing. It became shit when men got involved over these last 200 years. Seriously, women used to take care of women, and then we introduced men in hospitals. Then it went to shit. Humans aren't shit at birthing. Our species has evolved to require much more time to properly grow from young to mature because we are the apex of apex predators. Part of this growing process sees our birthing process take longer. The child takes more space to exit because of a larger cranium, longer to complete birth, longer to develop. All of this because of the size of our brains, which makes us the very best at basically everything. If you want fast pump outs, easy pregnancy, go be a chicken or something. Humans FTW. Because most humans insist a woman must lie down on her back to push a baby through the birth canal. Squatting, kneeling, or hands and knees positioning is more effective for allowing the birth canal to expand and letting gravity help. I've wondered the same thing. Wouldn't traits that reduce complications during pregnancy be heavily selected for? It might be that there are other important evolutionary pressures that are contradictory, like having a small pelvis. Evolutionarily, hard pregnancies might indicate a good compromise between various factors. A good compromise leaves everyone unhappy. People getting bigger is a huge reason birthing has gotten more dangerous. I recently read a doctor who blamed C-sections on small women making big babies with men who were too big, and the fact that women with narrow hips are no longer dying in childbirth. These women have more chances to pass on their bad hips. Natural selection isn't allowed to take over. The doctor recommended finding a mate close to your own size and recommended that men interested in fatherhood choose tall women with hourglass figures. Most healthy women with good bodies for birthing and pregnancy would be fine. My great-grandma birthed 16 at home and only lost one because of prematurely. She was 49. She lived to an old age and was healthy, for example. My husband went to a medical conference where they lectured on the importance of medical care for minorities. They said black women are more likely to die in childbirth due to obesity and the prevalence of gestational diabetes, which also makes babies larger. Labor is much more difficult when you aren't in shape physically, something our ancestors usually had on their side as well. We unlocked society early and were able to use its perks to mitigate the live birth debuffs. Many animals do this without the society perks. Since it wasn't a problem, it didn't need to be fixed, and evolution takes billions of years. But seriously, there's 8 billion of us. Do you think our reproductive systems need a balance patch? 'Cause it's working just fine, lol. If you think we're bad, don't Google spotted hyena births. I don't think it was ever an issue that evolution needed to fix. We survived fine as a species and even flourished well before modern medicine decreased infant and mother mortality. Because various evolutionary adaptations came at the expense of childbearing, our bipedalism made us able to see over long grass to see smaller animals for prey around when we started hunting and keep an eye out for predators, but this meant our hips had to be narrower. Similarly, our increased intelligence, which has benefited us in ways I don't have time to list, means we have bigger heads. Neither of these are bueno for childbirth. It's why newborns are so fragile and dependent. In an ideal world, human gestation would be longer, but if it was, a cesarean section would pretty much be a guarantee. Big brains let us survive more than narrow hips kill us. Large hips equals can't walk, small hips equals can't birth, middle ground equals A, that will do. If you think it's bad for humans, look at hyenas. Price we pay for walking upright. Your hips and pelvic bones can only be so wide and conducive to birthing before you'd lose that ability.